Here's one thing I know about the Obama administration. It is the most transparent administration in history. How do I know that? The president keeps telling me, as he did again last Thursday during a fireside Google chat.
On a whole bunch of fronts, we've kept that promise. This is the most transparent administration in history.
Oh, well, if you say so. Now, there's a new movie coming out called Silenced that might disagree, because they talked to 4 different whistleblowers that this administration cracked down on super hard because they dared to reveal information about the most transparent administration in history. Here's a part of the movie.
The apparatus of the U.S. government was turned against me. Every phone call you've ever made, emails you've ever sent, your bank statements, tax records.
What has now happened to my family? It's a very tormented existence.
You're not loyal, you're not a good American, you're a terrorist sympathizer.
That secrecy regime, despite President Obama's pledges of transparency and openness, has only continued to expand.
I'm not the pushover that these guys think I am. I'm as tough as they are, and I'm gonna fight.
Well, unfortunately, he's lost that fight to some degree. He's about to go to prison. That's John Kiriakou, who, of course, revealed the torture program. How dare you? Well, let me bring in 2 people to talk about this. So we're going to bring in James Spioni. He's the director of Silenced, and Lindsay Moran, who's a former CIA agent and author of Blowing My Cover, My Life as a CIA Spy. So it's great to have both of you here. James, let me start with you and start on Kiriakou. So it's interesting because the president said that on the issue of torture, he wasn't going to look backwards, he was going to only look forward. But when it came to a whistleblower on torture, he seemed to have looked backward, didn't he?
Well, yeah, that's right. And Mr. Kiriakou isn't the only one. As I think you're aware, the Obama administration has invoked the Espionage Act now 6 times, more than any other, I guess more than every other presidency combined. And they're charging people with this, using this act to charge people not for leaking information to a foreign country for some sort of profit, but for talking to the press. So it's both a kind of worrisome crackdown on whistleblowers, but it's also, in a way, kind of a backdoor way to limit access to the press. And I think people are starting to notice that.
Lindsay, you know, when you went to go publish your book, of course, the CIA, I imagine, went over it with a fine-tooth comb. But are things getting more strident and more stringent as we go along here over the last 10, 15 years or so? Or has the government always gone after anybody that revealed any information with a sledgehammer like they are today?
Well, I think clearly that it's becoming a lot worse for whistleblowers. I mean, let me say that working at the CIA or NSA is probably an almost impossible environment for anyone who plans to blow the whistle on a program that is either immoral, that they see as immoral or unethical. And, you know, I find it kind of ironic, the woman who recruited me to work for the CIA, I remember our initial interview and her telling me, if you ever sense that something's wrong, if something seems wrong to you, you need to tell someone, you need to tell a superior at the agency. And yet it quickly became evident that really you had no recourse if you thought that something was wrong, or if you disagreed with policies. You know, you had only one option, which was to approach an agency lawyer, and the job of the agency lawyer is really to protect the agency.
Yeah, you know, it seems to me, based on, you know, my 17 years of covering politics, that it has gotten substantially worse. You know, the government seems to be rigged, and if you point it out in any way, that's when they fall on you like a ton of bricks, while the banks, the torturers, all get out of jail get out of jail free card. So, to that point, James, it's not just Kiriakou. Tell me about the 3 other people in your movie and what they did.
Well, yeah, there are 3 other whistleblowers. Probably the most well-known of them is Thomas Drake, who worked for the National Security Agency at a very senior level. And I believe he was the first one hit by the Obama administration with charges, including Espionage Act charges. In his case, it was related to releasing information about warrantless wiretapping, which actually started during the Bush administration. And Tom Drake, you know, tried to your other guest's point, go through all the proper channels for years, tried to alert people to the problems with this program, its illegality, the wastefulness, the gigantic amounts of money being spent to no avail. And so finally, with no other recourse, he approached a reporter for the Baltimore Sun. And mind you, he was so buttoned up about it, he only made sure that he was releasing non-classified information. But too bad for him, because his home was raided. He was hit with 10 or 11 charges, which could have resulted in 35 years in prison. And, you know, he was a textbook whistleblower. He did everything by the book. The government eventually lost most of those charges, were dropped. Tom Drake ended up pleading guilty to a very minor charge. But, you know, in a way, the mission was accomplished, because he was saddled with hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal bills. Because of this one conviction on the minor charge, he can't work in government again. He can't work for a government contractor again. You know, they take people like this and they destroy them. And those aren't my words. Those are the words of Tom Drake.
Lindsay, I want to play you one more clip from Kiriakou from the movie here, because I think it's really powerful. Then ask you about if there's any difference between Bush and Obama on this front. Let's watch.
The only person who's going to prison for having anything related to do with the torture regime is the guy who blew the whistle on the torture. The torturers aren't going to prison. The people who ordered or conceived of the torture aren't going to prison.
So as you look at that, I get Bush's motivation. They're the ones who did the torture and the warrantless wiretapping, et cetera, in the first place. But did we get any change from the Obama administration, or do they seem to be helping the Bush administration cover this stuff up?
Well, I think in this case, they seem to be perpetuating the cover-up, and Kiriakou has pointed out that, you know, Obama really has surrounded himself with the same intelligence advisors that Bush had. And even though Obama, you know, ostensibly opposed the torture program, called for the calling of Guantanamo, which we have not seen that happen, this administration is really going after whistleblowers and kind of making an example, obviously making an example in this case. And it's kind of you know, when we join the agency, we swear an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, not the CIA and not any particular administration. And so it's very troubling to see what happens when someone tries to speak out and say, you know, I'm being asked to defend things that are not constitutionally legal and that are not part of the Constitution.
I love that you made that point, Lindsay. I think that's exactly right. And I want to thank you for being on, and James Spione is the director of Silence, which you could actually help on Kickstarter. Looks like an amazing movie. Thank you both for joining us. Really appreciate it.